My name is Rachel Dunmore. I'm 34 years old, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Heartland AgriChain Logistics, a company that moves $340 million worth of grain freight across 6 states every year. 9 years, 3 months, and 11 days ago, my father told me I could take my name off the family farm the same way I'd refused to put it on a loan. Last October, I stood under the string lights at the Millhaven County Harvest Festival, holding a manila folder my brother-in-law never saw coming. While 300 people who'd known me since I was in diapers watched him realize he'd made a mistake in front of all of them. "You never once helped with this farm," Dale said, loud enough for the funnel cake line to hear him. I didn't raise my voice back. I just opened the folder. But I'm getting ahead of myself. If you're watching this, do me a favor. Hit like, subscribe if you're new, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. It helps more than you'd think. Let me take you back to where this actually started. I grew up on 640 acres outside Millhaven, Nebraska, on land my great-grandfather cleared in 1919. My parents, Walter and Joan Dunmore, ran corn and soybeans, and my younger sister Melissa was, from the time I can remember, the daughter who stayed. She loved the smell of diesel and cut hay. I love spreadsheets. By 14, I was doing the farm's tax worksheets for fun at the kitchen table while Melissa drove the grain cart. My dad used to say, only half joking, Melissa's got dirt in her blood and Rachel's got a calculator for a heart. It got a laugh every time except from me. I still worked every harvest. Every single one. From age 16 to 23. I was up before 5 a.m. in October, smelling like diesel and dust by breakfast, hauling loads to the Platte Valley Grain Co-op in my dad's '04 Chevy 3500 with the cracked side mirror, weighing in under my own commercial license once I turned 18. I remember exact things about those mornings, the fog sitting low over the east field, the CB radio crackling with Carl Ostrander's voice calling out bin numbers, the smell of burnt coffee in a thermos my mother never washed out properly. Melissa got the compliments at Sunday dinner. I got asked more than once why I still bothered when everyone knew I'd end up behind a desk somewhere. Nobody remembered any of those mornings later. That's the whole point of this story. I went on to get my accounting degree at the University of Nebraska, passed my CPA exam at 23, and took a junior auditor job at a firm in Lincoln under a partner named Diane Kessler, who became the closest thing to a mentor I'd ever had. Diane taught me to read a balance sheet the way my father read weather. In the spring I turned 25, my parents asked me to co-sign a $210,000 operating loan so Dale, Melissa's husband by then, could buy a new combine and expand the grain bins. I asked to see the books first. What I found was a farm already leveraged at 78% debt to asset, 2 missed payments on an existing equipment loan, and a balloon payment due in 4 years that nobody had a plan for. I told them I couldn't sign it in good conscience, not as their daughter and not as an accountant. My father's face did something I'd never seen before. "If you won't put your name on paper for this family," he said, "then you can take it off too." Dale stood behind him, arms crossed, saying nothing, which somehow felt worse than if he'd spoken. I want to be fair to Dale here, because he wasn't a villain in his own story. He'd married into a farm that was already stretched thin, he had 2 kids by then, and he genuinely believed that one more piece of equipment would fix what debt had already broken. He wasn't lying when he said he needed help. He was scared, and scared people say things they can't take back. What he said, standing in that kitchen while I picked up my car keys, was, "You were never really one of us anyway, Rachel." Melissa proved it. She stayed. My mother didn't defend me. She just refilled Dad's coffee like the conversation was already over. I didn't cry in that kitchen. I want to be clear about that, because for years people assumed I must have. I drove the 4 hours back to Lincoln with the radio off, and somewhere around North Platte, I decided I wasn't going to spend the next decade trying to prove something to people who'd already decided the verdict. Diane Kessler let me stay in her guest room for 6 weeks that spring while I figured out my next move, and she never once asked me to explain myself. She just said, "Family's supposed to be the place that doesn't require an audit, Rachel. I'm sorry yours does." Year 1, I built a spreadsheet I still have, tracking every certified letter I sent home that went unanswered. Year 2, Diane made me partner track, and I started keeping a binder, actual manila folders because old habits die hard, of every pay stub, every promotion letter, every piece of proof that I was building something real. I called it my Harvest Years binder, half as a joke because it was full of the one thing nobody in my family remembered: the Platte Valley Co-op Way tickets from every load I'd ever hauled between 2011 and 2017, all under my own CDL number, all time stamped and signed. I'd saved them since I was 18 because Diane once told me, never throw away proof, even when you don't know yet what you'll need it for. Year 3, I got a text from Melissa on my birthday. It said, "Happy birthday. Hope work's going okay for you. Nothing about coming home." I sent a card to my parents that Christmas anyway. It came back 4 weeks later, unopened, stamp returned to sender in my mother's handwriting. Year 4, I made partner track senior associate at Diane's firm and bought my first condo in Omaha, a 1-bedroom on 40th Street with a parking spot I was absurdly proud of. Year 5, I got a call from an unknown Millhaven number that turned out to be my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, asking careful questions about whether I was doing all right out there, which I understood even then wasn't really about me, it was reconnaissance. I answered politely and never heard from her again. By year 6, I was senior director of finance at Heartland Agri-Chain, overseeing freight audits for co-ops across 3 states, including, without either of us realizing the irony for a long time, Platte Valley itself. By year 8, I was CFO, managing a team of 41 people and a freight book worth $340 million a year, and a trade publication called Grain Belt Quarterly ran a small profile on me with a photo and my title under it. That's when the silence broke, not out of love, but out of arithmetic. The message came through an old family group chat I'd been muted in but never removed from, and Melissa sent it to me directly by accident instead of to the chat. It was a screenshot of a conversation between her and Dale, and in it he'd written, "If we invite her to the festival and play it right, she's got the money to cover the balloon payment easy. $95,000 is nothing to her now." Melissa's own reply just said, "I feel weird about this, but okay." She realized her mistake 10 minutes later and texted me, "Ignore that, wrong chat, delete please," which of course meant I read it twice. I called my attorney friend, Priya Anand, before I called anyone in my family. I hadn't spoken to Dale or my father in 9 years, and I wasn't about to let a leaked group chat rush me into anything. We met at her office on a Tuesday, and I laid out everything. The original 2017 loan I'd refused to co-sign, the fact that my name had never appeared on a single deed, note, or partnership filing tied to the farm since. Priya pulled county records to confirm it while I sat there. She confirmed what I already suspected. I'd never signed a single document tying me to the farm's debt or ownership, and legally, I owed the Dunmore farm nothing, not $1 of that $95,000 balloon payment. Emotionally, though, I decided I still owed myself an answer to a question that had been sitting in me for almost a decade. Did they actually want me back, or just my checking account? There was only one way I was going to find out. So I went to the Harvest Festival. I told myself it was for the funnel cake and the fact that Diane had passed away that spring, and I'd been thinking a lot about what family was even supposed to mean. I brought the Harvest Years binder without fully deciding why. The festival smelled like everyone I remembered: kettle corn, fried dough, cattle from the 4-H barn, wood smoke from the pie contest tent. String lights ran the length of Main Street, and a bluegrass trio was playing near the gazebo when I found the Platte Valley Co-op booth, exactly where it had stood every year since I was a kid. Dale found me there around 7 that evening, Platte Valley's blue and gold banner right over both our heads, which turned out to matter more than either of us planned. He'd clearly had a beer or two, and he was louder than he needed to be when he said, "Look who decided she's too good for us to finally show up. You never once helped with this farm a day in your life, Rachel, and now you want to swoop in like the hero." A crowd does what crowds do at a small town festival. It gathers, slow and curious, funnel cakes still in hand. I saw my father's face over Dale's shoulder and Melissa's, both frozen, and I saw Carl Ostrander glance up from behind his laptop, like he already sensed where this was headed. I stayed calm, because I'd had 9 years to practice. I asked the co-op manager standing right there at the booth, a man named Carl Ostrander who'd known me since I was 16, if Platte Valley still kept digital way records going back to 2011. He said they did, all of them, federally required for 7 years minimum and archived after that. I asked him to pull up deliveries under CDL number ending in 4471. It took him 90 seconds on a laptop at his own booth. 22 loads, 312 hours behind the wheel across 6 harvest seasons, 14.2 average tons per load. All under my name, all before I turned 24. I didn't raise my voice. I said, I didn't need my name on a $210,000 loan to prove I belonged to this land, Dale. Apparently I needed a state-regulated scale to prove I was even here, because my own family forgot. That was the line the whole crowd went quiet on. Dale's face did something that I hadn't expected. The anger just went out of it, like a tire losing air. I know you helped, he said, quieter now, almost to himself. I told myself you didn't because it was easier than telling everyone I talked your dad into a loan we couldn't carry, and I've been scared out of my mind for 2 years that we're going to lose this place. That was as honest as I'd ever heard him. Then, a second later, he straightened back up and muttered something about how none of that changed the loan situation, like his pride needed one more lap around the block before it could sit down. I didn't fix it for them. I want to be honest about that too, because that's not how this ends. I didn't write a check that night or ever. The bank restructured the Dunmore Farms debt 8 months later on its own terms, not mine, and my parents sold 90 acres along the county road to cover what was left. That happened because of choices made a decade of harvest before I ever opened that folder, not because of anything I did or didn't do at a festival booth. What had happened was Melissa found me by my car afterward, and she didn't ask for money. She said, I should have said something in that kitchen 9 years ago. I've thought about it more than you probably know. I told her the door wasn't locked, just quiet. We've had coffee twice since. My father hasn't called. I've made my peace with that being where his story stays for now. If this is hitting close to home, drop a comment. I read every one. Here's what I actually learned, and it's not the thing people expect me to say. It's not that hard work always gets proven right, because sometimes the proof sits in a filing cabinet for 9 years and nobody ever asks to see it. What I learned is that you don't owe anyone a lifetime of evidence for a truth you already know about yourself. I kept those way tickets because Diane taught me never to throw away proof, but I lived my life for 9 years without ever needing to use them. That's the part worth remembering. The binder was for them, not for me. I already knew what I'd carried out of that farm. If you've ever been the one written out of your own family story, I hope you find your own version of a way station log. Something quiet, something factual, something that doesn't need to raise its voice to be believed. You don't have to forgive everyone. You don't have to cut everyone off either. You just have to stop waiting for people who forgot the truth to be the ones who hand it back to you. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one. Share it with somebody who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment and tell me what you'd have done in that kitchen, and I'll see you in the next one.